Yo, yo, yo. Yo, yo. What the? Stripper dude. Braku's in the chat and rock and roll. What's up, Braku and rock and roll? Stripper dude. Braku's in the chat and rock and roll. We got the potato microphone on tonight.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it. Just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44. Platform.
It's called a geometer. That's what they used to call themselves. They understood geometry and numbers. But there's an old conundrum where it says and during Pythagoras' days, Zeno's paradox it's called, where they said, well, if the wall is 2 feet away from me, and I take one step that's halfway to the wall, that'll be 1 foot away. And if I take another step that's half again, that'll be half a foot away, then a quarter of a foot. I could walk forever but never touch the wall. Doesn't sound realistic, doesn't make any sense in our real lives of the physical. But what Newton understood is many problems were like that. Many things approached the wall, or in calculus, approached the limit, but never really reached it. So he said, it's okay, you don't have to reach it. We can do lots of the mathematics as if it was so close, it was almost there. And we can do lots of mathematics almost being at the limit. And this is really important, Steve, for today. Because most of the science up until today was things that are starting to approach the limit. You were taught in high school that if you had 1 divided by 0, if you remember your high school algebra, you were told, what's the answer to that? Is there an answer to 1 divided by 0? No, if you were in high school, I'd say, stay away from it. It's the boogeyman. You could write it down as it's undefined. It's not able to be determined. There's a bunch of things. But in fact, 1 divided by 0 is a strange things happen. It's a world of the strange. And what I'll explain to you after is that when you get 1 divided by 0, you get into a world we don't know what happens. The answer is it's not explainable. We can call it things like undetermined. We can have a convention to say it's X, Y, or Z. But in real life, we don't know what happens when you are actually at the limit. So Newton thought the same concept is that the limits were God. You got close to God, but you could never be God. We had this sort of religious interpretation.
Okay, I want to go back to Newton. Why is Newton such a big dividing line in mankind's history? What is it about Newton? What is it about what he tried to solve? What did they not know beforehand? And because we live to a degree in a Newtonian universe, although I realized later subparticle atomic physics, but at least for a while it was Newtonian. So what's the dividing line? Why is he so important? Why is he an inflection point in mankind's movement from the swamp to the stars?
It's a great question. Because stars were by Kepler. What Newton starts to allow us to do is to make accurate predictions. Remember that we've talked about that with money, about the things in our physical world, how cars, he didn't have cars then, how horse carriages moved, how bowling balls moved, how pool cues and pool pool table balls.
Had people tried to solve that before Newton?
Many.
Heraclitus or Plotinus, Pythagoras had these greats that we hear about, had they tried to solve the same problem?
Not the same problem. They tried to, again, what Pythagoras does, he starts to figure out this relationships in triangles. For example, everyone knows the a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. That Pythagorean theorem, which is basically says these shapes in a triangle, each side of the triangle has a fixed relationship with the other two sides. That's strange. He knew, again, but it was all numbers. This was a system of things in the physical world, and Pythagoras says we can start putting numbers on things that help you predict how they will behave. You can add two triangles and make a square, some different shapes. They're looking at geometric forms. Newton says, well, I want to know how planets move. I want to know how things around me move. Can we find formulas? Can I find formulas that explain what I see in the physical world, how physical things interact and how they describe one another? Again, the fact that two solid masses, for some very strange, unknown reason, unknown today, attract one another, no matter what they are. People have seen the experiment. You hang something, two little metal balls from a string, they move towards each other. In fact, they move towards each other was very specific. So when you drop the ball to the floor of this room, Newton says, in fact, the room came up a bit to meet the ball. The room moved. It's imperceptible. You can't really perceive that motion, but they attracted each other with certain ratios. So he started to be able to measure things in the physical world. And that was great advances. It also, you wanted to move very quickly. Unfortunately, most people, especially in the 20th century, 19th century, said, well, like Newton, let's measure everything. Let's measure people's behavior. Let's measure their psychology. Let's measure their health. You go to we can have my blood test. Let's measure everything. We can measure Wall Street.
Their voting habits.
Measure. Can we put a number on how much I care for my wife? Can I put a number on how I feel? And we tried, unfortunately, we try to mathematize the finer things in life, and then recognize that there's things that, unfortunately, just fall outside. Schrodinger wrote a very famous book about what is life. He was trying to figure out a way, can he describe the difference formulaically between things that are alive and things that are dead? The answer is no. The things that are alive in my world are miracles, not magic. Magic has a bad connotation.
You don't believe in the spirit or the soul? That's what animates people, is your spirit or your soul. That's
no.
Have you ever seen someone die? When they die, their spirit leaves.
Their soul leaves, no question. So
there's no question to you about
no
that.
Question.
There's no question to you that there is some animating life force within us that leaves when you're dead.
Yes, in fact, I refer to the soul. There's obviously a certain the questions in the past. Even
people would normally think you were soulless. So
thank you.
But have you talk about you actually believe in it and have done some thinking about it is pretty shocking in its own right, isn't it?
Well, again, mathematics, Leibniz thought.
So Newton was at Cambridge, and he was the head of the math department, right? He's a professor, essentially.
Yes.
But Leibniz, was Leibniz a German professor?
Yes. But what Leibniz said is the soul is so strange because God took chemicals, which is simply the material, like tables, and he somehow made this material able to have a thought. How strange is that? Not only does it have a soul, but some way it was put together that this material substance is able to think. So when you say to me, it's obvious to everyone that there's such a thing as a soul. Now, if you're part of the Charlatanville, you'll try to explain it to people. The soul I describe as the dark matter of the brain. Why is it dark matter? Because in high energy physics nowadays, you hear terms of dark matter, dark energy. Again, terminology, complicated term. Why is it dark matter? Because we can't see it. That's all. What do you mean you can't see it? Well, somehow we see something moving towards this area of darkness. Something, I can see this thing. This appears to me to be empty. It's just black. But I see it being drawn this way. So I said, well, I know if this were matter, that would follow that equation. If this was solid, it would explain the way this particle moves. But I can't see anything here. So I'll just call it dark matter. And I'll say, I don't know what it is, but it behaves as if there was something there. The soul is obvious to everyone that there's something different between things that are alive and things that are not alive. But we have no idea what it is. It's currently unexplainable. I believe we need an entirely different system of analysis to try to figure out.
But sorry, no. With Newton, with all his chemical studies and things he worked on the spiritual side, Leibniz had just talked about the soul. Schroeder talked about what it's like. If a modern scientist or someone that you funded at MIT or Harvard or one of these things talked in those types of terms, they would be considered to be a wingnut today, wouldn't they? They would not be. They would not be on the path for tenure, right?
Unless they were in the philosophy department.
This is exactly my point. We're talking about three of the greatest mathematicians in mankind's history that have really changed mankind. Talking like this, what happened? How do we get to a situation where they could not be in the high physics? They could not be in the mathematics department or working in high energy physics.
Good. It's an easy answer. Newton was a combination of mathematician or geometer then and philosopher, and as time went on, those disciplines seemed to move apart. We had philosophy. Some of the philosophers can't do math, and some of the mathematicians. And again, mathematicians often break into two categories: people that solve problems. Those are more like geometers in the old days, just problem solvers. And then there's thinkers, theoreticians. They're more like the old movement towards philosophy. But neither one of those two groups have been able to figure out why something is alive as opposed to something that's not alive. No one's been able to describe what the soul is, but we all know it exists. And I think what we need is science is a bad word. I think science only describes the things we already know about the physical world. In fact, there's an argument that the physical world that we see has been created out of our systems of mathematics. Mathematics, everyone knows mathematics describes the physical world much greater than it should, unless my view, the physical world really comes out of conscious beings that have mathematics. So they create it. This table appears to you and I to be solid. To a bat, because we have light that's bouncing off the table into our eyes, it appears solid. If instead of eyes that responded to wavelengths of visual light, our eyes responded to radio waves, the radio frequencies, it's not different, it's the same type of frequency as light, but different speeds, the table's invisible. We know that our phone works in this room. So the waves are coming through the windows, the waves are coming through the walls. So the walls are invisible to that type of radiation, that type of energy. The walls I can see them because my eyes, a physical system determines that the walls are there.
You, with Murray Geldman, you founded, or were the original donor, and had the idea of Santa Fe Institute. In 10 or 15 years later, that effort to study the complexity of systems mathematically.
Yes.
Was
it's a total failure. Yeah.
A total failure.
Total failure.
Why is that?
It's the failure of science because, in fact, if to some extent science doesn't describe romance, I don't know why I'm attracted to somebody. I don't know. people are attracted to each other, and everyone has the same feeling. They've seen someone walk in the room, and they say, "Oh, that person gives me a creepy feeling." Science has tried to describe. Science doesn't describe what creepy feelings means. They just know it's a creepy feeling. I think women, as I said the last time, have an intuitive sense. What is intuitive? They have intuition, they have feelings, and they're able to deal in the realm of things that men, especially men like myself, find unexplainable. Women have intuition, men see things a bit differently. Men want to measure everything. Women are not really that interested in measuring.
In what you're saying in macro terms, you actually think science, mathematics, maybe ultimately technology is moving to that more intuitive.
I think science and math are old-fashioned. And unfortunately, people are still taught that they have to learn algebra in school and certain things in school, as opposed to learning to have an emotion.
Is this what Larry Summers was trying to get at? Maybe he didn't say it perfectly enough, but what he was trying to get to in that system, the systems we study today, the way mathematics is either taught or understood, that women just haven't gotten up to the highest realms of engineering or physics or mathematics because of that. And you're actually implying that there's a either new branch of science, or we've hit an inflection point like in Newton that's going to go in a Newton took mankind in a different direction because he was able to measure. Then you had subatomic, non-Newtonian physics later. Are you saying that you think there's another developing field that's coming up that may take us, I don't know how many decades to get our hands around, but that's what's evolving out of this?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I think that mathematics, it's not the end of science. And every year someone says it's the end of, we can't discover everything. There's lots to discover with relationship to the physical world, but we know a lot already. In respect to the unexplainable world, we almost know nothing. Women, again, sense it. And instead of Larry Summers, I won't digress too much, but Howard Gardner early on said, there's not one form of intelligence. It's not mathematical intelligence. There's emotional intelligence. There's kinesthetic intelligence. There's this argument that I reject that black people are less intelligent than white people. It's not true. We know, for example, that if I was in the forest and I had to run from the lion or figure out a way not to be eaten, and my competition is a local African, I'm the one who's getting eaten because they have the intelligence to deal with their local environment. So it's just different. It's not better, it's not worse, but there's many differences amongst different types of people. And so people have different intelligences, and they excel in some intelligences usually, and less so in others.
Yo, rock
when
and
did
roll,
it come to, because the world of high finance is a world of pure reason, or is it a lot of emotion and gut checks and on trading desks and central banks when these decisions get made? Is it that high church, like the high church of science of high energy physics, or is it as much emotion that comes in as much as the mathematics and the reason?
It's a great question. I think if you talk to really experienced and successful traders and you ask them how they know what's going on, they can't give you an answer. They don't know. They feel it. They can feel the way the market's moving. They can feel the way the stock's moving. And these are not very well-defined terms. It's difficult to put in mathematics terms. How did I feel it? You could look back and make guesses what I was seeing. But great traders feel it and then act on their feelings. That's the difference. Many people feel it but are afraid because they want a mathematical justification before they take that next step.
When you first got on the trading desk at Bear Stearns in the late 70s or mid 70s, were you shocked by how little actual understanding of mathematics that the traders comprehended?
Yeah, well, again, we had a Texas Instrument calculator. Most stockbrokers, especially before 1975, if they were good stockbrokers, could add. That's about it. They could multiply. If you could multiply, you were already in the top 15% of stockbrokers. Stockbrokers simply meant that there's a story When I went to the first person, I had no money. And I said, how much money do you make a year? And he said, $400,000. I said, impossible. I'm making $10,000.
That's probably more than your family had made in its entire existence.
Yes. And he makes it in a year. I said, what do you do? And he said, it's too complicated for you to understand. Which is what the main thrust of Wall Street people, they want to tell you it's too complicated. Because if you understood that that person was simply, he had a brother-in-law, in fact, in this case, who ran the pension fund of General Motors. His brother-in-law would call and say, buy 1,000 IBM.
Yes.
He'd hang up the phone, he'd write it out on a ticket, and walk it to a window. That was his entire skill set. Hello, write what my brother-in-law says, walk it to a ticket window.
Oh,
Give me an example when you're on the trading desk in the early days of Bear Stearns of a time in an airplane cockpit where it's going wrong. Walk us through that.
In 1978, I think it was, across the news wires, there had been a collapse of the currency in Thailand. On the other side of the world, had no relationship to me. I wasn't sure where Thailand was. But the fact that a currency, a country's money, had all of a sudden dropped tremendously in value, affected the rest of the world's markets. And people panicked because they'd never seen that before. A very small part of a very complex system had a shock throughout the whole system. So prices on Park Avenue apartments, the bond markets, the stock markets, every started to gyrate. You know, there's an old mathematical expression that if a butterfly wings in Mexico make the wrong turn, it spins out, and eventually, by the time it gets to Canada, it turns into a tornado. So these are part of complex systems. So yeah, Wall Street in certain parts.
Santa Fe Institute was supposed to actually come up with a formula for that, for the butterfly wings. Why in 15 years did you reach the end of at least that experiment?
Every attempt to, that's why it's so exciting now, because I think certain people are starting to realize that there's so many things that are unexplainable that we have to think about them differently. Music is a great example. It's a common man's example. You know, when you hear a certain song, it makes you feel a certain way. How does it do that? We don't know. We can't mathematize it. And even that music, Steve, nowadays we compress music. When you have a violin, it's compressed onto your iPhone. So what is and when I squish it or compress it, I have to take out lots of pieces, but I say that they're not very important pieces. It's those pieces that we take out when we compress data, to me, are the most interesting parts of life.
You just said a while ago, so part of this new search for science may go back to when people were actually talking about a soul, and you said there's no doubt in your mind that there is a soul. Describe for me what you mean by that. What do you mean by soul? What do you mean soul different than the physical analog body that we're seeing on film right now?
It's difficult to describe in words. I mean, I'm not a poet. Poems get a little closer to what that really means. But even the concept of what is life becomes complicated when you deal with plants and seeds. Is a seed alive? I don't know. And certain people would say, no, it's dead. When your banana, one of my favorite examples is the banana that's sitting on the countertop in your kitchen today. Is it alive or dead?
What do you think about human life? Tell me about human life.
But your banana is alive. That banana is breathing. It's on your. You say that's impossible, Jeffrey. No, it's not.
Is the banana conscious?
All these are words. So everyone's trying to fit a very complicated concepts into a very small box called conscious or alive. These don't fit in that way. So if you put your banana in a bag and put another fruit in with it, the fruit ripens faster because the banana breathes with it. We don't understand most of those things. So you asked the big question. Sorry.
You talk about the life. What about human life?
What about it?
Tell me what do you think? What do you think human life is?
It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And when I say miracle, I can't explain it, and I make no attempt to explain it at the moment. We don't know how to think about it. And anyone, and again, another one of the Feynman quotes when he was talking about quantum physics. He said, anyone, Jeffrey, who says they understand quantum physics and the quantum mechanics and quantum behavior, you know they're lying.
Let's talk about it. That's post-Newtonian. Talk about what's the difference. Who founded quantum mechanics? Why is quantum mechanics taking Newtonian physics and taking it to the next level?
It forms a much broader category.
Let's go back to this desk. You use the thing of Newton using this desk. Why can't Newton's theory explain everything? Why did subatomic quantum mechanics or quantum physics have to come in to explain this?
Well, so let's go right back to square one. Why is it called quantum physics? So quanta is a word that simply means packet, small amount. So it's quantized. So we recognized, when we recognized that this table appears, another very complicated word, solid to us, it's really made up of molecules or atoms. And atoms, we've given lots of names to what some of the behaviors. If you were in school, when you and I were in school in the 50s, the model was a little center thing in the middle, and an electron went around and around it. It was seen as a ball that went around and around it. Examine that little thing called an electron. It was simply a cloud of energy that we can call an electron. So we already started to see mysterious things as we go into very super small quantities, quantum physics. So quantum physics started to go into the very small, and at very small distances, we see things that we can't explain. We just cannot explain.
How am I doing on time?
4 minutes.
Fine.
And to summarize, no, sorry.
Let's go back to human life. When do you think human life starts?
It's not so you see, this is the question. You're asking me to measure something again. It's the
It can't be measured. You just hate making commitments.
That's why I'm not married.
I'm peeling this onion back a layer at a time. All your bullshit and happy target can't be measured like that. Is that to say measure it's a commitment. You don't even like a commitment when you answer a question.
I don't.
As they say in golf, commit to the shot.
I don't know what it means to be measured.
You do know what it means to be measured. You're one of the leading currency traders, hedge fund guys, or stock market financial wizards. You're in the high priesthood of high finance. You certainly know how to measure. That's why you're a billionaire. Any other answer besides that is total and complete bullshit. And you know it.
I know very few things.
You know things can be measured. You measure every day. You weigh and measure every day. You weigh and measure people. You weigh and measure leaders. You weigh and measure economies. You weigh and measure politics.
It's a very good.
You weigh and measure.
Hang on.
Your whole life, in fact, is measuring. So what you've now done is a great thing. Is you've used the word measure, a mathematic term, in a common vernacular, and abused it. So I don't even recognize what it means. It's so abusive to my field. Why? And let's go to that. In mathematics, measure means what specifically?
There's no specific. It's an approximation, or giving something a number. Einstein said,
we're not asking you to go to the 9th decimal point.
That you didn't say that before.
No, you're not going to the 9th.
I don't even. What if I say measure? How tall are you? You'd say, in your case, 6 foot.
6 feet.
But is it 6 foot 1 inch?
Give or take, it's between 5'11" and 6 feet.
But what's that? So the question is, I want an accurate.
I got Zeno's paradox.
I don't even know what it means to measure you. Am I measuring the top of your hair, the top of your skull? The finer, the more
you're being rabbinical. This is like
I shaved my beard off. I used to be rabbinical.
No, my point is, isn't that going through the Torah where you're parsing every definition?
No, so,
however we broadly define measure, your life literally is about measuring, is it not?
It's about putting numbers on things so that I can try my best. That you can call it whatever you like. If that makes you feel better.
What do you know? No, I want to relate it back to your scientific inquiry.
You know, even a number. People don't. A number is a complicated.
When did
thing.
you come? When did you come to this inflect? When did you come to this aha moment? Was when it was in your solitary confinement, when the biggest financial crisis in world history was going on, in your 7x9 jail cell with your metal bed and your two brushes because you were a trustee with the brown uniform on, trustee spelled wrong. Is that the moment of clarity that you had about science and Newtonian physics and everything that we can measure is really not going to be the way we go forward? It's going to be much more esoteric, emotional intelligence things. Was that your moment of clarity?
I wish it was, because it would make such a great story for this interview, but it's not. It's the fact that I lead such a privileged life to come across.
But when did you? But if it didn't happen then, when did it? Or did it happen before?
I was going to hopefully get to the.
Okay.
I'm in a privileged position